Hi, this is Mark Struthers. Today we'd like to take a look at the generation, the baby boomers, from boomer hippie to boomer geriatric. Yes, sir, this group finally made it to retirement. The golden years. The hippie movement, also known as the counterculture, was composed mainly of teenagers and people in their early 20s during the late 60s and early 70s. This group largely belonged to what demographers call the baby boomer generation. If we consider the start of the hippie movement around the mid-1960s, individuals who were in their early 20s at that time would be in their late 70s or early 80s by 2030. The term golden years typically refers to the period of life after retirement, where one is free from the daily grind of work and can enjoy leisure activities, hobbies, and their interests more fully. Surviving and thriving during these years can mean different things to different people. Aging has its challenges, but meaningful goals can lead to health and happiness. Living with a sense of purpose, acting in accord with your most cherished values and goals, has numerous benefits for both physical and mental health. Aging is a progressive process. Physiologic reserve continues to decrease with age and eventually affects outcomes. Age-related changes such as weakness, unsteady gait, slowed reaction times, cognitive impairments, and changes in insight predispose older people to trauma. We'll take a look at 3 types of scenarios for aging. The first option is aging in place. It is a term that refers to the ability of an individual to live in their own home and community safely, independently, and comfortably, regardless of age, income, or ability level. Numbers 2 through 5 cover how we're able to age in place. We begin by planning ahead. It's important to think about things that might help you in the near future. Secondly, we need to support services, and almost any type of help can be arranged at home, from Meals on Wheels to relatives or having a personal caretaker. Then we look at home modifications. If physical conditions or cognitive disorders make living at home difficult or unsafe, modifications can be made to accommodate these needs, such as stair lifts, handrails, and things like this. Finally, you want to make great social connections. Maintaining strong relationships with family and friends is key to living in place. Loneliness is one of the biggest factors in being elderly. The next scenario for the elderly would be to live in assisted care or a nursing home. So what is the cost of nursing homes in the United States? Well, the cost varies depending on the location, type of care, and other facilities. According to a 2023 survey, the average cost of nursing home care in the United States ranges from $7,000 to $9,000 per month, and assisted living is about a minimum of $4,500 a month. Now let's take a look at the last group of people, the homeless. Homeless people have higher rates of hospital and emergency department use than the general population, and often suffer from serious conditions upon admittance to a hospital, resulting in high medical cost and potentially long stays. Let's take a look at life expectancy in the United States. Today, in 2023, the life expectancy is 79.11 years, or basically 80 years of age. In 2019, it was 78 or 79. For the baby boomers, time is marching on. Now that we've seen how the progression of the baby boomers has gone in age, let's take a look about geriatric trauma and care. Remember, many of those who were at Woodstock are now in the emergency room. Emergency room care for the elderly is basically more difficult and risky than for the young. Trauma is a significant cause of death among the elderly. It's also important to note that elderly patients are more likely to die than younger counterparts due to their aging and decreased functional capacity of most organ systems. When elderly go to the hospital, most elderly trauma patients will do well and return to function if they survive the hospital. As we all know, the hospital is one of the most dangerous places to be if you're a patient. In 2023, the statistics show that 1 out of 4 people that are admitted to the hospital today have a bad experience, at least one, while they're in the hospital. The cost of trauma in the elderly is significant. According to the American Association for the Surgery of Trauma, trauma in elderly patients accounts for $12 billion in annual medical expenditures and $25 billion in total annual healthcare expenditures. In terms of falls, which are a common cause of trauma in the elderly, the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, reports that older adults' falls cost $50 billion in medical costs annually, and 3/4 are paid for by Medicare and Medicaid. Here are some facts about geriatric trauma in 2023. Geriatric patients are chronically under-triaged, increasing their risk for morbidity and death. Every 11 seconds, an older person is receiving treatment for a fall in the emergency room. In the U.S., accidental falls in older people complicate 2% of hospital stays. 80% of hospital falls aren't witnessed by the staff. Geriatric trauma patients are chronically under-triaged, increasing their risk for morbidity and death. The geriatric patient is 5 times more likely to die from trauma than a younger patient who suffers a similar mechanism of injury. Falls and motor vehicle crashes are the most common mechanism of injury among older adults. Wow, it looks like she's all right, but you know what? Looks like the car fell. Motor vehicles accidents account for about 20% of the trauma in older adults. I wonder what happened to this couple. Oh, now I see. It looks like the wife was driving. At least that's his explanation. 1 out of 5 falls causes a serious injury, such as a broken bone or a head injury. Falls associated with blunt cerebral injury and long bone fractures have the greatest morbidity and mortality rate. According to the CDC, more than 95% of hip fractures in the elderly are caused by falling, usually by falling sideways, and 1 in 5 geriatric patients who suffer a hip fracture die within 1 year. Females are more likely than men to be injured when they fall. Let's take a closer look at the death rate here. 1 in 3 adults aged 50 and over dies within 12 months of suffering a hip fracture. Older adults have a 5 to 8 times higher risk of dying within the first 3 months of a hip fracture compared to those without a hip fracture. Now for one we don't want to think about, but happens quite frequently. This is elder abuse. Remember, as we get older, we become vulnerable. Let's take a look at some of the contributing factors. First, you have an increased life expectancy. With that, you can have physical and mental impairments, and there can be an increased dependence with greater longevity on caretakers. You're no longer able to do many things. In fact, you've got a lot of decreased productivity, and there really are limited resources for elder care, and they are expensive. The stress of middle-aged caretakers responsible for taking care of two generations can cause a great deal of frustration. For elder abuse, it really can be broken down into just two categories: domestic, which means family, and institutional, which means caretakers that are being paid to take care of your loved ones. It's unfortunate, but long-term health care in nursing homes and even assisted living homes is not the best. The lack of quality personnel and the number of personnel could really be considered elder abuse because the patients are being neglected or not treated. In institutional abuse, the perpetrators usually are persons who have legal or contractual obligations to provide care for the patients. This includes paid caretakers, staff, professional staff, and physicians. Domestic abuse happens when the caretaker for the elderly person takes advantage of them, either financially or physical. And a lot of times, believe it or not, that person is their spouse who they've been married to for many years. It may also be the children, such as the daughter or the son, or another family member that has the task of staying with and taking care of the elderly person. In a majority of cases, it's just a result of frustration of having to take care of someone that cannot take care of themselves 24/7. But on the whole, if you do have golden years, truly golden years, you should love and enjoy each and every moment you have. This is Mark Struthers saying thanks for your time and your attention.